Hey, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Sambo Patrick, and today I've got a long-term colleague, friend, naturopath, Matt Legge, who years ago, so you've been a naturopath for over 25 years and started off with a company, a practitioner-only company in Australia. And I remember sitting in seminars going, this is the smartest human I've ever listened to. And I used to love listening to how you broke things down, the biochemistry, which can be really boring. And you just made it so easy, and you've got such a beautiful delivery pattern, and helping people understand the physiology and the impact of the environment. So I'm just so stoked to have you on here. And now I understand you're doing a bit more formulation, but yeah, thank you and welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a nice intro. Pressure's on.
Yeah, yeah. So, what have you been up to the last, maybe do give a little 25-year summary of the
Yeah,
career path you've taken and the interest that you've found in this natural medicine, which is really life, uh, Lane.
yeah. Well, it started off with a naturopath clinic, trying to generate a lot of protocols from existing products, and then I got more interested in using ingredients that weren't necessarily available and started compounding up a lot of my own supplements within the clinic. Then I started sharing out those formulas, and that got me into the whole formulation game where I started working for companies designing some products. I was actually told I was unemployable at that probably that same job you told me that you saw my seminars. And they told me to go start my own company if I had so many ideas and ideals. So I did. And I started up ATP Science, and we did a podcast and seminars. I think at one stage we were like number one in the world for that podcast.
Yeah.
Audio, we didn't do much video, for obvious reasons. And then yeah, so now I work formulating for other companies, helping to design a lot of products, and recently working in a big project to release personalized nutrition system, which I find really exciting because we get to do a lot of those back to where we started of developing protocols and combining ingredients. So that's probably a big gist of it. Recently did that product with Joel Parkinson and your other friend, Bianca Richardson, called Neoactive, where we made
Yes.
some cool products.
Which is on the
Yeah, all
market
sorts of
now.
stuff.
And yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Just
like this
looking.
personalized nutrition as well. So they look like little coffee pods. And in there,
Yeah,
and as a practitioner, I can do this, you can do this. We can say, well, we think you're low on zinc. Well, we know you're low on zinc. Let's pop this all in here in a very palatable, easy way, non-big fat pill, but
yeah,
easy method to take a supplement. It
yeah,
looks
definitely. And convenient, so we're not whole bench covered in half-finished supplements.
jars everywhere and yeah,
Mm.
looking like you're
Yeah,
sick.
yeah, exactly. Yes, which we're not. That's why we take them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, fantastic. Well, today I've asked you to come on because this series is for men specifically and women who want to understand more about what makes men tick in terms of hormones. And one thing I've found is that guys don't relate to the word hormones. They kind of think it's a female thing. So just as a guy, can you tell me what guys do relate to? So it'll help me a little bit.
Testosterone is a hormone.
Yes,
So that's pretty much all we would need to know about the guys, really. No.
right.
But we do. We all make testosterone. Both men and women actually make testosterone. So 95% of the men's testosterone is made in their testicles.
Mhm.
And then and right up until we get to there is actually a male version of menopause, which is called andropause.
Yeah.
And that's a transition phase when our testes are making less testosterone and our adrenal glands and other parts of our body has to pick up. But what a lot of guys don't realize is all we have a lot of other hormones as well. We have estrogen, the female hormone, and dihydrotestosterone, and a lot of other stress hormones, and they all interact. So our lifestyle and our sleep and our age and our environment and our diet and all of those sort of things interact to regulate our testosterone levels. So, but that's the most important thing I think for dudes when it comes to talking about hormones. Revolve everything around testosterone, and it makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Because that
Mm.
is, it's definitely a trigger word. It's like, yeah, you're talking about my testosterone, you're talking about my manlyhood. It's they go
Mm.
hand in hand.
Yeah, 100%. But that is, I mean, that's the man hormone. I mean, even in women, when women get excessive amounts of testosterone, they become extra manly. And that is an interesting fact, actually. In the last 50 years, the men's testosterone levels have typically declined. We're about 20 to 30% lower than what we were in the 80s.
Mm,
And interestingly, a lot of women away from menopause, they're actually higher,
mm,
So there is that our life and our lifestyle and that has changed significantly. And like as a man, the role of a man typically through the years has been to protect and provide.
mm,
Interestingly, those sort of things that the men do, the hunting, the gathering, the hunting and shagging, the protecting and providing are all things that actually increase testosterone until we get into modern society where in order to protect and provide, it means we typically just have to work a lot
mm.
and maybe stress a lot and not necessarily doing that chopping wood,
Physical
making
stuff.
fire, hunting. Yeah. So we're losing a lot of that exercise. We're losing a lot of the sunshine. We're spending more time sitting around. We're spending more time doing night shift and losing sleep, working in an offices and that sort of stuff, surrounded by mold. Those sort of things, which is one of the major factors, plastics and pesticides and all those sort of things that we're exposed to more now is the reason why men's testosterone is significantly lower.
Yeah.
Um, Makes it hard to be manly. So
So,
mm.
yeah, and I should have just said at the outset, if Matt and I swear on this podcast, forgive us. We both can get a bit, like we're both just so passionate about this space. So I'll just put that
Have I
case.
sweared? Have I sworn already?
No, you
I haven't
haven't, but
even
I
done.
just
Oh,
thought,
I was sitting there
oh,
thinking,
here
oh
we
my
go,
God.
just in
Oh,
case.
oh yeah, no, it's inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought I might just mention it now, so no one gets offended. Um, but yeah, I used to, and this might be, what are we, 2025 at the time of recording this, but back in 2015, one of my keynote talks was men are becoming men, sorry, women are becoming men and men are becoming women. And, that was very much about what you were just saying. Women are raising testosterone levels in their fertile years, which is, leading to PCO and endo, which are the leading causes of infertility. It's like 8 in 10 women who can't fall pregnant naturally have those phenomena, which are high testosterone, high estrogen driven states. And meanwhile, our guys aren't producing enough testosterone for a lot of those reasons you highlighted, which we might dive back into,
Yeah.
and losing their manliness. And
Mm,
it's interesting because us girls are going, we want you to listen to us. We want you to sit on the couch and, watch
mm.
Sleepless in Seattle and cry with us. But guys, I still believe have to hunt and gather somehow in a modern day life and not just leave the office, go from office to home and think hunting, gatherings, getting a paycheck.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a real, and even if people took only one thing away from the podcast today, to realize that protecting and providing is not simply getting that paycheck through, it's that maintaining that things that men can do, which is, hunting and gathering. And you can still do those sort of things in the modern era. And we can at least manifest those same things, like even chopping wood and that sort of stuff has been definitely shown to increase testosterone levels and all those sorts of exercises that we can do. And it's essential that we put it in, as well as male bonding. There's
Mm.
plenty of studies that talk about the need for men to have boys' nights and stuff like that because back in cavemen days or whatever, they'd be off on hunting trips and sitting around a fire, and that would have their male bonding and all that sort of stuff as well, which is very different to having a conversation at home, with the missus about sleepless in Seattle's and
And all
whatever.
our complaints of the day, which really don't mean much, and you go, I just want to be out there with a spear.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's hard. You hear about the day at work, and Pam said this to what's her name, and they're sitting there going, "Who are these people? Do I need to spear them for you?"
And do I have to keep listening to
Otherwise, yeah,
you?
otherwise, why am I hearing about this? No. But yeah, that even though it's so funny, just that hunting and gathering, just that being out in nature, under the sunshine, roaming around the beach, roaming around the scrub, yeah, even like foraging and fossicking and looking for rocks and stuff, all those weird things that dudes do, need to do that actually are exercise, and they are manifest in the body as hunting and gathering. Like I said, hunting and shagging, or hunting shags, or whatever dudes do to boost testosterone naturally.
Ah, yes. There should be more of it. So,
Yeah.
you touched on some things that might switch off testosterone for guys. What are classic things that you've seen? You've had a very busy clinic dealing with a lot of minors and guys, range of men who really should be the epitome of men in
Mm.
terms of their hormone status, but no doubt have struggled with keeping testosterone up. What things have you seen and know from science switches testosterone down?
Yep. Plastics is a big one in modern society. So the fact there's plastic everywhere, and even a lot of the water pipes that are delivering the water into the homes across the front lawns, there's plastics, the coffee cups with the little plastic lids on it. There's plastic absolutely everywhere. They're finding studies are just finding just plastic as infiltrate microplastics and these phthalates, I don't know how to say them still, BPA, these other
BPA.
compounds that are found in plastics directly can have an anti-androgen effect. They
Right,
can also increase estrogen activity.
right.
And there's an enzyme called aromatase which converts testosterone to estrogen. And this is mainly found in hair, skin, testes, fat cells. And when you get exposure to these compounds, aromatase is, without getting too technical, there's a whole heap of phase one detoxification pathways. We call them phase one cytochrome P450s, but they convert toxins and poisons into water soluble things typically, or convert them into something else so we're capable of clearing them away. They're really designed to deal with poisons and venoms and
Mm,
other things that are associated with nature. But
mm,
when we get exposed to toxins and get exposed to plastics, they all speed up these particular detox enzymes, and they start converting our testosterone to estrogen. And the more fat cells you got, the more likely you are to convert testosterone to estrogen, and it can contribute to obesity and cellulite or man boobs and that sort of stuff. Again, it's in the hair, so it can contribute to other hair problems. And so that's a major one. Plastics.
mm,
The rest of them, a lot of them are pesticides, and a lot of them are exposure to other compounds that come from fossil fuels. So if you have a look at, like I said in my clinic, I used to work at a clinic in Mackay to do with a lot of miners, a lot of cane farmers. I used to deal with a lot of bikies and that sort of stuff. But a lot of these people, manly men, like doing
mm.
the
Right.
man jobs, but they're exposed to pesticides, plastics, burning of fossil fuels and that sort of stuff that create a lot of hormonal conversion problems and convert their testosterone to estrogen. They might finish off the day with a beer that is full of phytoestrogens and also upregulates that same aromatase and converts testosterone to estrogen. So a lot of those things we would normally be doing that would increase testosterone, such as working outside in the sun, doing physical labor, are actually we at the same time we're getting exposure. Um, there's certain nutrients our body uses as well to clear away those toxins.
Mm,
Things like zinc and selenium are the main ones that come to mind straight away.
mm,
They call chelation, they bind to these toxins and try to deactivate and clear them away.
mm,
If we get deficient in zinc and selenium, then another enzyme speeds up, the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, and that converts our testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which is about 2.5 to 5 times stronger than testosterone, but it's the one that causes male pattern baldness. It causes the acne. It causes prostate problems.
mm,
So, the end of the day, our ratios between testosterone and estrogen and testosterone and dihydrotestosterone determine whether we've got male pattern baldness, a dad belly, acne, man boob combination, or whether we've got testosterone that gives us vitality and virility and awesome recovery and a healthy immune system and makes us tough as nails. So I think it's the exposure in
mm.
the fact that while men are protecting and providing, they're now forced to work into an environment where they're exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals and compounds, and the stress and lack of sleep. So,
Yes. Because so stress, there's so much to unpack here. So
yeah,
let's get to stress and sleep in a sec.
yep,
Um, just on the plastics, I heard, so I think a lot of people who listen to this might not be totally aware of the negative impact of their environment on their testosterone production per se. And I heard the other day that the BPAs go down into the left testy,
yeah.
specifically, not the right, the left.
Oh, yeah, well, lefty's always a star. A lot of yeah, there's always one that's an attention seeker.
Is that
And
right?
I was
Take your
only
word for it.
yeah, the weirdest things that I Google. I'd hate to see my Google history one day, but I just had that the other day. I was just wonder why there's one's always longer than the other. But
Yeah.
then I didn't even have to Google that one because I realized if they were next to each other, when you're walking, it would just smack
Oh, that'd
into
be,
each other all the
yeah.
time. And you couldn't really have one in front of the other. That would be weird, sitting down and stacking like that. But I wouldn't be surprised. It might be the lower one, it might be falling into it or something. But
Gravitation.
it's going to be curious. I don't know why the left one.
Something else on your Google history, mate.
Yeah, I know. I know we have the right lung sits lower because the heart sits on the left. So a lot of crap falls into the right lung,
Mm.
sits in the bottom of the right lung. So maybe it's just an offset so we don't walk around in circles. The right
Yeah.
lung sits lower, so we drop the
Thinking.
left nut down a little bit lower. But yeah, might be just going from personal experience too, the left being a star. But anyway,
I might take a poll one day. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
maybe we should. We should ask people like typically do it. Is the left one typically lower or larger or whatever. Anyway, that's
yes,
for another day, another
yes, any
trial.
ideas? So the other things that will switch down testosterone production will be
Yep.
sleep and stress. So just tell us about when yeah, tell us about why those two are important.
Well, typically through the evening is when we make a lot of those hormones.
Right.
And we normally, so throughout the day, if you're in the first thing in the morning is when our testosterone levels are the highest because we're
Yeah.
spending more time making that testosterone at night. Um, so basically, our nervous system split between two different types. The autonomic nervous system. We've got the fight or flight or the stress, the thinking and working nervous system, and then we've got the rest and digest. So we switch off into the parasympathetic nervous system when we're sleeping. It also
Ideally.
does, yeah, yes, ideally. And there's a lot to talk about there when it
Mm,
comes to society and how we really struggle to get that balance. And then talking about a lot of shift workers, it's a big problem as well.
mm.
Um, but yeah, typically we're supposed to switch into the parasympathetic nervous system at night, which allows us to do our hormones as well as doing a lot of our detoxification, repair, and maintenance and repair. So the hormones are used for us to regenerate all of our muscle tissue. And I used to do a lot of work with a lot of athletes and a lot of the enhanced athletes. And
Mm.
when I say enhanced, they're just injecting testosterone and
Right.
growth hormones and that sort of thing. But the one thing that used to blow my mind is how hard these guys could train and just recover immediately. That
Right.
high level of testosterone. And same as when we're young, we can go and just destroy ourselves out on the footy field or working and then wake up the next day and maybe a bit of soreness, but you don't have that aching, inflammatory pain and messed up joints that we get as our testosterone levels drop. So throughout the evenings when we do our regeneration and repair, and that is also supposed to happen when our cortisol levels are at their lowest.
Right.
So throughout the day, now we're talking about cortisol.
Yeah.
So cortisol is the hormone that's like it's associated with stress because when we're stressed, our cortisol levels are high. But it's actually our anti-stress hormone. So it's
Mm.
supposed to be coming out and switching off our stress response and switching off things that trigger our stress response, like inflammation and pain or immune activation. But the problem is there's all sorts of stress nonstop, so our
Mm.
body just keeps releasing cortisol all the bloody time. So the key is we're supposed to have high cortisol all day,
Mm.
pretty much, and then it tapers off at night, and then at night we're supposed to have really low levels. And while our cortisol levels are really low at night, our testosterone comes out to play, and does all its healing, regeneration, and all that sort of stuff.
So
So,
testosterone is therefore more of a, like you're saying, this repair stuff. So it sounds like
mm,
it's has a role with inflammation and repair, which I wasn't
yeah.
really right.
No, 100%. Yeah, testosterone does that. It also does stimulate the immune system and that sort of stuff as well, for more of a antimicrobial defense, which is the whole theory behind how man flu is a real thing. Because when we have a flu, we
Go
have it.
on.
It's the immune system. So it's actually the immune system that makes you feel lousy, not the bug.
Right.
And the more exaggerated the immune system is, the more worse you feel through the flu. So that's why men with more testosterone get a more exaggerated immune response. So the immune system creates more aches and pains and more fevers and everything like that. So because we have an amplified immune response, which usually hits things harder, and then it's like a lot of the survival stuff that testosterone enhances. It
Mm.
actually gives you a big bang of aggression or a big, rah, big outlet, but then it kind of switches off really quickly. There's
Yeah.
even studies that show, with a negative feedback on our brain chemistry, the difference between testosterone and estrogen is, with estrogen, you get less negative feedback. So it's harder to switch off the mind when you have an estrogen dominance, where the testosterone allows for a big outburst and then it's kind of over. So
Yes, I can
same
relate.
thing it does to the immune system. Yeah.
Okay. So
Mm.
with uh so tell us what other things testosterone do then. Maybe the psychological benefits, the physical things that a guy would feel with, say, good robust levels of testosterone.
Yep, yep. Good levels of testosterone. And like I said before, it's also to do with our ratios.
Right.
So sometimes you get good levels of testosterone, but if you've also got a lot of conversion to
Mm.
dihydrotestosterone or estrogen, it can blur some of those lines. So at good levels of testosterone, you should have good vitality. You
Hmm.
should have good virility. It should give you that strength. And with that strength and confidence comes that level of calmness during a survival or a stress response. So testosterone, yes, it's involved in aggression and it's involved in fight or flight responses and helps to amplify those, but it doesn't necessarily make you aggressive and angry as such. However, dihydrotestosterone does. So we
Okay.
got a lot of conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone in the brain. And testosterone is the one that's associated with acne, male pattern baldness, very common in teenagers, and
Mm.
that sort of stuff. And it creates a lot more of that irritability and a lot more of that aggression, and that irrational kind of behavior comes from dihydrotestosterone. Even
Mm.
a lot of the roid rage or something like
Mm.
that, which you hear about again with the enhanced people, is that they get that uncontrollable aggression, and that's more associated with dihydrotestosterone. You'll often find the acne, the male pattern baldness, and the dad belly, and all that sort of stuff also linked in with that dihydrotestosterone, bad moods and crankiness and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Then the testosterone can also convert to estrogen. In men, the conversion of testosterone to estrogen does definitely create that inability to switch off the mind, that
Mm.
constant worry, that constant kind of stress, that feeling of inadequacy, the feelings of needing to be protected and provided for, and that sort of stuff, as opposed to being that confident,
Got it.
calm, strong, kind, protecting man that is capable of protecting and providing for their family and community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say, just on the mental health side,
Hmm.
years ago in a former life, I was in pharmaceuticals for 9 years, and one of the products that I promoted was a SSRI. And I look back on those years now, and I would have had I mean, I couldn't because I was working for a company, but I would have a totally different conversation with a doctor now. I'd say, this is hormonal until proven otherwise.
Mm,
Because,
yeah.
it's such a key feature of, like you've just said, inadequacy, overthoughts as a guy, anxiety. Yeah, maybe if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so the SSRI drugs work by preserving mainly serotonin in the synapses. Serotonin's the chemical that's usually released after shagging, after a big binge, after feeding. Yeah, so normally when you've got a good hormonal profile, you get a lot of testosterone, and you do those hunting and gatherings that allows you to have a big feed. You've hunted a shag and you've had your shag, and you get that. They're all the things that after you've done all the manly things, you get this big release of serotonin. And
Mm,
that's the signal for you to be able to, your job's done, your work is done. I can feel content and relaxed and satisfied enough to have a good night's sleep and to not be worrying unnecessarily, you know.
mm,
And that's where the hormonal has a massive effect on that. Also, too, they've even shown that the actual cortisol has an effect on stopping serotonin activity.
mm,
So therefore, when you've got too much chronic stress, too much cortisol, it's telling your body that there's still stress around. So if you're not actually punching something and running, you should at least be hiding. Don't relax, like stay in that ready, stay in a very light sleep. Don't drift off into that deep sleep. Don't relax too much because there's still stress around you when you've got to be there to fight your own battles, but also protect them for the
case.
others. Yeah. Yeah. It keeps you on guard. So that's where they just these days, instead of fixing the ability for you to have a good routine with good exercise and a good outlet, a good sex life and all that sort of stuff, it's like, well, let's just compensate by giving them that chemical that's released after you do all those things and allow you to feel satisfied and content with that mediocrity that we're kind of living in. So,
And inadvertently, SSRIs switch off sex drive.
yes.
One of the major
Yeah.
side effects of them is, 25% of people on an SSRI, we used to call one of them so soft. Just swap the,
Yeah.
that was the nickname for it.
Yeah, that's funny because and it does fit in because immediately after um, sex and after ejaculations and that sort of stuff, the testosterone levels, they're high in the hunting and gathering phase of that. But then after you've had it, it kind of drops off in the short term. So
Mm.
that might be associated negative, it might be associated with that serotonin release, might even have that effect. That might be how the body knows you've had a win.
Yeah.
And then it
Relax
drops your
time. Oof.
testosterone levels. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Bliss.
yeah, crazy. Hey, and then of course oxytocin and all those other chemicals that we have released as our love chemical and love hormone, they all have those same sort of effects of interacting with testosterone.
Yeah, so let's talk about the relationship because oxytocin's, I have pet hormones, and
Yeah,
oxytocin's my favorite. Dopamine's my second favorite. Vitamin D would be my third. Like I love them all like little entities.
yeah.
Cortisol's made its way into the top 10, which is nice. But cortisol and testosterone, what's the actual biochemical pathway, high cortisol switching down testosterone? Can you remember it? Because I certainly
No.
can't.
Well, it's the funny thing is, so the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, pretty much switches off all the other axes.
Right.
So when the HPA axis is working, the others switch off. So it does switch because it's telling you you're in a survival response. And when
Yes.
you're in survival response, there's no point shagging for fun. Definitely no point shagging for reproductive purposes. If you're
Mm,
under chronic stress, it's not a good time. It switches off the gonadal axis in both men and women to a certain degree. It does influence the thyroid axis as well, which
mm,
our thyroid gland it's our pacemaker for our body, our metabolism. So
mm.
in acute stress, you'll get a faster thyroid to help you just to be faster
Yeah.
and speed up and liberate more fuel so you can get away. But in chronic stress, it slows your thyroid down.
Mm,
So the adrenal axis, which is where you release adrenaline and noradrenaline immediately with stress, then about 10 seconds later, the cortisol comes out, tells them all to switch off, which is often why they tell you to count to 10 before you punch someone and run. Wait for the cortisol to come out and then activate that negative feedback. But the problem is, man, in nature, you can imagine. I just called you man, by the way.
that's
But
I
the
know.
problem
I just gonna let one
is,
slide
just
through the
sorry.
keeper. That's okay.
Yeah. The problem is, I'm talking to your male audience there. No,
Yes.
the problem is, in nature, if you were like in a pit of spiders or something and you jump out of that pit of spiders and you land into a pit of snakes and you've just had this cortisol coming out saying, okay, chill out, relax. You can't. You've got to go again. So
Mm,
anytime you get another stress trigger, it overrides your normal negative feedback. So you've just got to go. Stress is the priority. And the
mm,
challenging thing for our body is it can't afford to wait to see what your stress is. It
mm,
could be an inflammation, it could be toxic exposure, it could be a plastic, could be pain. There's so many things that could be stress. It could be a memory. This is where trauma, it could be your posture, you
Mm.
know, like if you've got your shoulders hunched over, you're on your balls of your feet, you're sitting at a desk like that, but it still manifests a defensive posture. That
Mm.
can even activate your stress nervous system. But like I said, so can a memory, and a memory can come from a smell or a music or a sound or a trigger from someone, you know. So, and memories are so important because most of our memories are there because we survived a situation. So anyone that talks about a trauma or I've never been the same since, you know, this event, a lot of that can be a combination of an emotion attached to a memory and even a posture attached to a memory that at any fleeting little moment can pop in, trigger your stress nervous system, switch
Mm.
off your increased cortisol, switch off your other hormones, and that sort of stuff. And that's again back to your oxytocin. It fits in nicely because the oxytocin being the love chemical, which is that one that comes out when you need a hug and that sort of stuff. It helps to regulate, you know, your stress responses to let you know that you're safe and cool and all that sort of thing. But also exercise and those things that help with our posture. Get up off the chair, like even understanding posture. We don't realize how much our posture affects us. One of my best mates, Ken Ware, he runs this neurophysics thing.
Yeah.
He gets people out of wheelchairs and that sort of stuff, but he specializes with a lot of trauma stuff.
Right.
Some of the tools that he taught me, because when I used to be in that corporate environment, and I grew up, you know, like most other blokes, where to deal with conflict, you kind of be tough or something like that. The next thing you know, working in office with 80% women and sitting in boardrooms, people wearing suits and stuff like that. And then you feel this level of intimidation from some pissweak little accountant or something, that you just get this rage building up and you're sitting there going like, I don't know how to like kind of deal with this.
Mm.
And you just try to bottle it in because you're like, I can't snap. Like that's inappropriate right now. I can't tell people what you know. And he
Feeling.
taught me, yeah, he taught me a couple of things, which is number one, he says in that situation, the first thing to do for my posture, he said, just be aware of your posture. Like,
Right.
is your head forward? Are your traps up? Like, are you on the balls of your feet? Um, and then also too, if you are, like the first thing to do is push your heels into the ground. As soon
Right.
as you push your heels into the ground, and he says, and then just be aware of your traps. And
Mm.
next thing you know, once your heels are down and your traps drop, he said your head comes back. He says the whole nervous system lets you know that even if you are feeling stressed right now, but if you were in a life-threatening situation, or if you're about to have a fight, you wouldn't be sitting back on your heels. You wouldn't be dropping your traps. You wouldn't be like kind of just being calm and slow. You'd be doing this. So it kind of helps to offset, gives more signals back to your brain to say, that might be a memory or that might be a thing, but right now we're not in a life-threatening stress situation. So you don't need all that adrenaline, you don't need all that rage, and you don't need all of those sort of things to do with this stress. The
Mm.
other thing that he taught me that goes really good with, because most of the time when someone's trying to bully you or intimidate you, they
Yeah.
see you calm and relaxed like that. All of a sudden they're going, oh man, this guy's not intimidated at all. Yeah, he's not scared of it. Next
Diffuses
thing
the
to do is,
situation.
yeah, and then a really cool strategy to follow that up with is to express why you're emotional as opposed to expressing your emotions.
Right.
And it's quite intimidating back to them for you to all of a sudden go really calm and then go back and call it on and go, man, for a moment there, I was feeling like you're attacking me. For a moment there, I felt like you were trying to intimidate me. You know, was your intention to try to bully me or something like that? And often these people will be like, no, no, absolutely not. I was not trying to do those things. And you're like, oh, cool, because the way you were talking to me was making me feel that way. And I'm so glad we're not doing that. So like, what were you trying to do? What were you trying to say, you know? And it changes the whole dialogue, the whole conversation. And all of a sudden you're kind of the person that's in control as opposed to the feeling like the person that's about to lose control, you know?
Mm.
Those sort of little tips and tricks were so helpful just to regulate that nervous system in a situation that you can't avoid, which is a lot of the stuff that dudes are doing when they're working, you know, and they got bosses that are often stupider than them and smaller than them and, you know, weaker than them or something. And they're sitting there in their face doing this stuff. And like normal men situation in a tribal environment would be like, you can't talk to me like that. Like, you
Yeah.
know, so yeah.
So is there an unconscious thing where we lean for like into an aggressive posture, is there? Like I haven't really
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a
Mm,
big thing, man. It's a really big thing because when you go to fight or when you go to run away, you move up onto the balls of your feet straight away. You
yeah.
can't do that from sitting back on your heels.
Mm.
That whole shoulders up and shoulders forward and the lats up, the hair on your back stands up, or mine does anyway. Um, you probably don't have that problem, I'm assuming.
No.
And then, there's all that body language of protecting our chest and protecting our heart and all the stuff that we do when we fight. It's all part of that.
And the
And
breathing
that,
must get shallow because you're kind of
yeah,
oxygening
it
your
does. It
cage.
does. And also sometimes even to a hyperventilation, because then what happens, we get more carbon dioxide in our blood and we feel less pain. We
Mm,
also dissociate. A big part of our stress response is dissociation, where it
mm,
feels like our head separates from our body.
mm.
Sometimes it feels like we're watching the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
like I used to do a lot with public speaking. So I used to be fine with public speaking because I could convince myself I could do anything.
Mm,
And I was not going to, as nervous as I was, it's like I'm sitting there just talking. And there
mm.
was a study once where more people were scared of public speaking than they were of dying. And I
Yes.
never forgot that study because it was like, if I had the choice, I'd public speak. So I'm sitting there going like, um, for me, it's not that bad, but I'd be in the middle of these seminars or talking and I'd be sweating. Even in a cold room, I'd have this sweat up. I'd actually be getting a sore back. I'd
Mm,
realized that this whole time I've been doing it, I've been like on the balls of my feet, traps up, jaw, and head forward, and realizing that I'm maintaining this. My body didn't know that my brain was cool with it. And so you can convince your brain that you can do anything, but sometimes it's just the awareness. That's why I like mentioning it in a podcast like this, because some
mm.
people might be out there listening to it right now going, oh my God, I live that way,
Yeah.
and in meetings, that's how we maintain attention. We might lean forward and put our shirt, do everything forward, where actually just being a little bit calmer and sitting back a little bit and moving your center of gravity back. And
Mm,
our head, the weight of our head is massive.
mm.
And so when we actually don't have our head sitting on our proper center of gravity and we're constantly like leaning forward, I think that's how we get a lot of these back problems and a lot of all these dudes are getting really bad backs and back pain and everything, just from the fact that if you had a bowling ball on a stick and you were trying to hold that down the bottom, you'd realize how heavy that bloody thing is. And
Yeah.
that's what hits us right in the middle of the back, is our muscles in our middle of the back trying to hold this
Trying to stabilize it and hold
bloody
it.
bowling ball. I think our head is around the same weight as a bowling
It
ball.
is.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So that if you actually did that not that many people have got a bowling ball on a stick at home to do that
Waiting to do
experiment with,
this.
but just imagine. Yeah.
Someone will go and yeah, no, and just the protrusion, the forward movement of the jaw and the chin coming forward, even to look at computer screens,
Yep.
puts the spinal cord, which is like a rubber band, into this tense state.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just then it has to compensate. The rest of the body
Or
has
our
to go, oh my
phones,
God. Yeah.
like on the phones, we're all doing it. Like, so that could be a big part of the stress as well. Just when we're not at an office, we're at the phone, we're doing all that same sort of stuff. And even just taking time out in your day to calibrate,
Shoulders back
like
and
just calibrate your posture,
mm,
knowing that even if you've got inflammation, oxidative stress, there's plastics and all that sort of crap's around. If you can actually calibrate your posture with surrounding by stress, that in itself is a massive way of reducing the stress response in your body. It's just one really powerful signal that goes back to your body. And the
mm,
funny thing is what I find with a lot of men too, we're a lot of it, like not so much head down, but a lot of it's foot up. Like we get a lot of data from our body back to our brain to say you're safe, as
right.
opposed to your brain sitting there having to all the time say, like for meditation or something. I think in a lot of men's health stuff, doing the things that calibrate your posture and do all that sort of stuff is often more effective than doing like a meditation course or something, like where people are saying, now imagine yourself in a rainforest, imagine yourself relaxed, imagine you're better off being in the rainforest, you're better off being relaxed, because men will do things with such intensity sometimes. It's like I'm imagining the shit out of this, like I'm meditating harder than any of you fuckers. Look at me, like, and I'll be in there like I'm imagining this spirit guide walking me through the rainforest, and fuck yeah, this river's cold and nice. But you'd be like doing it with such intensity that it's not kind of working. Where if you actually got the people just like relax your shoulders, do this, put the stuff in, let your mind do whatever the hell it's going to do. Like, don't bother about trying to be in that blank space, because just allow the shit to go. Like the amount of stuff that can go through your mind in the golf swing. That's what spins me out. You talk to sports people and golfers, and in the process of them getting the golf swing up and then back to there, they could be thinking of 100 different little things, just bang, 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 flying through. So it's more important to calibrate foot up, get the signals going up to the brain to say, you're safe, you're content, you're in a cool environment, regardless of what's happening up there. It's not that bad.
I
And
like
if it
it.
was that bad, you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be
Yeah,
sitting here like an idiot in a rainforest going, oh, if you
right.
were under stress. So it's like, obviously the stress isn't that bad. Calibrate your stress levels back to this now, you know?
Yes.
So,
And
mm,
that word calibrate's really good because my experience is a lot of people, it gets, I always say 1 to 10, where are you sitting over the day? Oh, well, by the time I wake up, I've got to get the kids to school. So I'm out of 10.
mm,
Really?
mm,
You feel like 10 out of 10 is imploding and your life's about to be ended and it's real death. Yeah, oh, yes. Then I drop them to school. How's it then? 12 out of 10. And, we
yeah.
spend the whole day kind of fascinating with near death experience physiologically when it's not the case at all. It's just situational, triggered by
Mm,
thoughts or past history, memories or a smell of a coffee. And if we don't practice recalibrating and bringing that stress bar down closer to zero, then we've got nowhere to go. We've only got from, if you're bouncing around 7 and above, it doesn't take much to flip it into 11 and implosion.
yep. And society wants us to make it look like we're doing everything hard.
Yeah.
They want us to show that. They don't want to, like, I don't know whether it's an Australian thing just stemming from that old convict culture where you got to
Mm.
look busy or something like that. I don't know what it is, but there is this big thing in society where people want to show that they're doing everything hard. And they don't reward people that actually get results and make it look easy. They reward
So
people that
true.
make things look really hard, and therefore you must be working really hard because this looks really hard for you.
There's a lot of
you
dust
know?
around you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I don't know what that is, but and I'll have to introduce you to Ken Ware, and you should get him on the podcast because he can sit there and talk about all of this stuff, and he's
Brilliant.
give you tips and techniques on actually how to calibrate. So he's got me now going down in the mornings, closing my eyes and standing on one foot sometimes if I can get. Sometimes just can't do it, and just doing very simple things like
Hmm.
just with my eyes closed, making sure my fingers touch and doing like 10-second repetitions of everything. And even just when I go to the
I
gym,
missed.
oh, you nailed it. And like even when he goes to the gym, yeah, you can do your good exercises and do that, but recalibrate everything because sometimes at the gym we're like, and that's again
Amazing.
manifesting a fight or flight and stress response. So after you do all that, what you want to do is do like nail 3 perfect 10-second reps with perfect symmetry to let your body know that again, if you were under massive stress, you wouldn't be doing this. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a big that's probably a really cool thing for us to do in the future because it's so important and so powerful to regulate your nervous system to modify your hormones because so much of it can be mental. Mm.
I'd say majority of it is really
Yeah, our perception of stress is more powerful than the stress,
the
you
real
know?
stressor. If you're isolated
Yeah.
stressor, it's
Mm.
rarely life-threatening.
Yeah. And combinations. So if you've got the crap posture, you're feeling intimidated, at the same time as you're surrounded by you're drinking something out of plastic,
Yeah.
burning fossil fuels in your face, all of,
Yeah.
just exhaust fumes and sitting in
Noisy
traffic.
environment. Ah.
Yeah, so all of those things we can't avoid, but if there's something that we can actually that we have control of, like our posture and our ability to calibrate our nervous system to say, again, I'm surrounded by stress, I can't change it, but if it was really bad, would I be doing this? And don't close your eyes and do that while you're driving in
No,
traffic. That was
that's
probably
right.
bad sequence of examples then, but you know what I mean.
I do. Um,
Mm.
with so let's look at the negative, more of the negative around testosterone and
Yep.
combination I see regularly is low testosterone, high estrogen. And you're saying as well with the what's the abbreviated for the dihydroxy testosterone? It's
Yeah.
D.
DHT.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what are the negatives when you see that pattern? What things can
Yep.
happen in the body apart
Well,
from
if
the
you get
baldness, the like,
yep.
the big stuff?
So when you get lower testosterone in relation to dihydrotestosterone, and
Hmm.
the worst problem scenario associated with that in men is prostate problems,
Yes.
prostate cancers, and that sort of stuff. And it's funny because in recent times they're just linking estrogen to the prostate cancer as the same as dihydrotestosterone.
Mm.
They used to always say it was testosterone problem, but then why weren't our testosterone levels peak when we're in our late teens and early 20s, and no one has prostate problems then. The
No.
prostate problems come in later. And there's a big link with industry, motorbikes and all that sort of stuff with the prostate as well. A lot of that's the exposure to the fossil fuels and
Okay.
the cyclists like Lance Armstrongs and all
I
those
say
kind of,
Lance
it's got
Armstrong. It's funny you say cyclist. I think Lance. So do you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and they got the testicular cancers, prostate
Mm.
cancers, and that sort of stuff. Lance is a different kettle of fish now too, because we don't really know what other juice was involved.
Endogenous stuff
But
in it. Mm.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, if you get lower testosterone and higher dihydro and estrogen, we often get more prostate swelling and
Yeah.
potentially prostate cancer.
Right.
And because the prostate's that little beanie thing that wraps around your wee tube. When it swells, it lifts up that wee tube, and you get that little bit of section behind it that sticks in the bladder where you need to wee all the time. And then when you go to wee, you can't wee properly with the proper force. So that's a big one. And otherwise, male pattern baldness, visceral fat, dihydrotestosterone holds a lot of fat in around those internal organs.
Yeah.
So the dad belly, that it's not fat, it's muscle because it's so hard. It's like no, it's just fat behind the muscle
Or
layer.
I heard the other day,
Um,
I've just got a barrel chest. I went, okay, whatever you want
yeah,
to
that
call it.
fell down. Yeah, my
Yeah,
barrel
that's
chest
right.
fell. But no, yeah, so that dihydrotestosterone that holds that visceral fat, that creates a lot of problems around liver problems, but also that's where we get a lot of diabetes and blood sugar and a lot of cardiovascular problems because the fat that sits in the middle gets a lot of blood supply. So it's constantly putting that fat back in and out of your bloodstream, which is why the testosterone and the dihydrotestosterone can also contribute to the cardiovascular disease because it's constantly putting fat in your bloodstream. That fat in the bloodstream can contribute to both cardiovascular disease and blood sugar problems like
Mm,
diabetes. If you get a fatty liver, the liver doesn't know how to measure the blood sugar, so it just keeps pumping sugar into your blood. So usually when people start getting abnormal blood sugar readings first thing in the morning, fasting blood sugar, that's the liver pumping it all out because the liver's getting all fatty. And that's all linked in with those dihydrotestosterone. When the men's testosterone levels drop and their estrogen comes up, that causes a lot of obesity, but it's more around the love handles, the man boobs,
mm,
the upper thighs and inner thighs, a lot of those kind of like that estrogen kind of body type
yeah.
where you get the booty and all that sort of stuff. So you get it mainly, but it's outside fat. It's around just under the skin, and a lot around the chest. So the chest will start changing and getting the moobs and that sort of thing, backs of the arms and all those sort of things that the old ladies might get from the
Chuck shop
testosterone
arms.
dropping. Yeah, yeah. The muffin tops and the front veranda, and the spare tires. They're all the ones that. I had one the other day, banana roll. I still don't actually know what that one is, but so I won't mention it too much. And even cellulite, so the dudes get too much estrogen, it gets that cellulite kind of really fluidy fat. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the main problem. Obesity, which again contributes to every other health disease we have.
And
So,
I was not thinking about depression. You were talking about moobs. Keep talking, and I'll come back to what I was thinking about with the estrogen.
and that's the other thing. So with the dihydrotestosterone, that's when you get really irrational, angry moods. So you get that depression born from anger and
Right.
irritation and frustration. Interesting, even in Chinese medicine, they always talk about that as liver heat rising, which links into all that fatty liver and everything as well. And the estrogen creates that real depression that comes from apathy and sadness and that inability to switch off the mind, the anxiety, the worry, that feeling of low self-esteem, self-worth. At the end of the day, you just can't switch off and you keep thinking. They're the main, where if you get good levels of testosterone to offset all of those sort of things, you get more of that confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, pride.
And the one that I was thinking of, which slipped my mind, I don't know how, is
Mm.
erectile and sexual function.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
the big one really, which a lot of guys
yeah,
mention testosterone straight away. They go, "Oh yeah, my sex drive and libido and
yeah.
performance." So, are there differences between high DHET and sex drive and estrogen, or are they manifest the same?
Well, it's interesting because dihydrotestosterone, it is 2.5 times to 5 times more androgenic than testosterone. So
Right.
often, as our testosterone levels drop, that's one of the reasons why our body converts more of it through to DHT, because DHT still does have that ability to stimulate your libido and your sex drive and that. But if it's not offset by your testosterone, I think that's where it becomes a little bit problematic, you know? So the testosterone still gives you that um, offsets the exaggerated effects. But if your testosterone's moving down the estrogen pathway, then that definitely can reduce not just libido and sexual desire, but also sexual performance. So you get significantly less, erection potential, I think they call it, or the amount of times you get a woody throughout the day and everything like that. Testosterone directly increases blood flow, increases blood vessels, and also has that vasodilation effect, which is everything you need to be able to dilate the blood vessels to improve. I'm trying to keep my hands still here because I have this terrible habit of using my hands when I talk. And these are the sort of things I don't want to be using hand gestures for at
No,
all.
they're
You
not.
should see the podcast where I talk about breast problems. I spend the whole time. But so yeah, definitely as testosterone drops, libido, desire, and everything like that drops, you get a lot more of that anxiety around sexual performance. So the more estrogen you got, the more anxiety you got, you're more likely to have the premature ejaculation problems or erectile dysfunction. If you get the testosterone low but dihydrotestosterone high, sometimes it's not as obvious because the dihydrotestosterone still drives up sexual
Benefits of the testosterone.
desires and all that sort of stuff, but might have prostate problems and acne and baldness with it, you know. So, but that's often too why they talk about that the baldness. You know, it's a solar panel for a sex machine because often you'll find there is a link between the dihydrotestosterone levels and sexual desire and that sort of stuff
Right.
because the dihydrotestosterone is significantly more potent, like up to 5 times as potent as testosterone for those sort of actions. But you want a bit of each, you know. You need that
Yeah.
balance. Yeah.
It's a good segue into artificial stimulating testosterone in guys,
Yep.
and this is worthy of a podcast on its own. But if we were to look
Mm,
at common things now, and look, just before we leave erectile dysfunction or issues around erections and sexual performance, once again, like depression in men, I would be doing a testosterone test, an estrogen test, and DHT test. And your average GP isn't geared to think like that or look for things like that. So
mm,
I just encourage guys listening to this that you need to find someone. You probably do it, Matt. I do it. There's people around who specialize in this. Go to those people. Get to the cause of what's going on at a deeper level rather than just be given a band-aid pill, basically. Though they help, of course, but you end up on blue pill, white pill, yellow pill,
yeah.
when it all could come back to the same thing. You're just over aromatizing or something's very simple.
Yeah.
But
And
let's
measure
look.
prolactin. So when they do those tests, to also measure things like prolactin, sex hormone binding globulin, because we need
Yeah,
to know what your free levels of testosterone. There's a hormone, no, it's a hormone, a globulin that comes out that deactivates all of your hormones. So even if you do have them there, you can
mm,
be under stress and inflammation, and the sex hormone binding globulin goes really high and deactivates all your testosterones, and you got
gobbles it
no
all up.
action from them. Yeah, exactly. Not cool. Um, yes.
That's
What was
right.
the other
FSH,
one?
prolactin. I tend to use saliva
Yeah,
testing, but there's benefits either way, I guess.
yeah, exactly. I like
Um,
to do it. I'll just do the testing that people go and get done. For so many times I give them the saliva ones and I just follow up later, go, oh, I still haven't done it.
Yeah, yeah,
So the blood tests sometimes are easy. Um,
true.
whatever test it is, it doesn't matter. It's
Just get it
useful.
tested. Get your
Yeah.
measure your testosterone levels and your estrogen, and get
Mm.
some sophisticated stuff going to understand your body better. The exogenous hormones. Let's talk about those.
Oh yeah.
TRT. So it's not just TRT. It's just not testosterone replacement. There's other stuff like growth hormone. And can you just
Mm.
give us a quick snapshot of what you know to be popular out there? And there's obviously legal and illegal.
Yep.
Um, I would suggest I'm not endorsing either at this point in time, but it's not hard to get illegal test boosters. It might be even harder to get a script from a doctor for this because it's has to fit
Yeah.
certain criteria. But just take us through what sort of things guys can
Oh,
accept.
there's a lot. And there's a
Right.
lot of different options out there. Now we're even in the era of research chemical versions of peptides where we're still not sure what they're doing as well. And some of them we do know very well, they work very well. But the big point, the general point to make across all of them is our brain has negative feedback pathways.
Mm,
Our whole body has negative feedback pathways. So the normal process is our body would sense through receptors that we don't have enough of these hormones, and it
mm.
would send a message to your body to make more.
Yeah.
Now, and then what happens is as you make more and it floats around your body and does its things, it activates these receptors. And through a process called negative feedback, it says, we have enough. You
Mm,
don't need to make any more. And that kind of happens in pulses, constantly assessing it. Do we need more or don't we need more? Anytime you do an intervention, whether it's bioidentical hormones through the doctors or whether it's another injected steroid that you've got from the guy at the gym or whatever, um, those things will have an impact on negative feedback and will send a message back to your body saying, we're doing it for you. You don't need to do it.
mm.
So there's always that
And it switches
um,
off the natural
it
production there.
switches it off. That's where that reputation of taking steroids, it shrinks your nuts. It does send a message back to the parts of your body that were making those hormones and says you're not needed. We're doing it for you.
Mm,
So all of those different things are very powerful, that negative feedback. And that's why they always run cycles. So they'll run a cycle of something and then wean on it, or like wean off it to allow the body to kind of pick up and make the difference.
yeah.
Or they'll often use post-cycle therapies and that to get the nuts to kick in again and, work again. So it is a bit of a vicious cycle.
Mm,
Also being aware that, we mentioned before that we have fat cells, skin and hair and parts of our body and the liver that actually are designed to convert these things to other things. So when you get a big surge of testosterone, if you're the sort of person that's kind of got a lot of fat, you're more likely to convert that testosterone to estrogen. You're more likely to get the man boobs. So your other mate that might have used one of these agents that got shredded and that dry hardness in their muscles, and you're going, yeah, I want to look ripped like you. I want to have the veins. I want to have that dry, hard feathering through the muscles. And, the reason why you have that is because you take steroids. It's not the case. The reason why they usually have that is because they have a physique and a lifestyle where they do a lot of training and genetics that allows them to get these great results. If you've got a lot of fat and that sort of stuff, potentially your body could hijack those same steroids and convert it through to estrogen and give you man boobs, or convert it through to dihydrotestosterone and get prostate problems, or remove the last of your hair, or just cover your back with acne. So if you have those predispositions to the conversions, then those sort of compounds may make things worse, not necessarily better. And then you might go to a doctor that advertises that they don't do that. They do bioidentical hormones, which
mm.
is basically giving you a testosterone or DHEA or something like that in a capsule or a cream. Still got the same issues. We still got to regulate the conversion pathways. We need to make sure you've got good levels of B vitamins and zinc and selenium, lots of antioxidants in your diet. Most, when you boil down to the things that control these enzymes, a lot of them are antioxidants. They just slow down those pathways. Um, there's a whole heap of foods like basil and mushrooms and all those sort of things. But a lot of zinc and selenium, pumpkin seeds, Brazil nuts. There's a lot of things that we can do naturally to help control those conversion pathways. But
Mm.
body composition is really important. If you're fat and you take those things, you're going to get a lot more estrogen. So you still got to kind of go back and treat the cause. There's a lot of cool herbs that do work, and they work with the natural body processes.
Yeah.
Like when we were talking before about erectile dysfunction and sexual stuff, like Tonkat Ali is one of my most favorite
Good,
herbs of
Ali.
all time.
So cool.
It is so underrated too. It's very
Yeah.
hard to get good stuff is the problem. You know, its other names are Malaysian Viagra. There's a lot of dodgy suppliers of it out there. But the thing I love about Tonkat Ali, from what we are talking about before, is typically I tell people to have it at night.
Mm.
Tonkat Ali forces cortisol levels right down. It
Right.
can drop cortisol by up to 20% at night, and it can increase morning DHEA, and it increases your testosterone. So it drops off your stress nervous system. It tells that to switch off, and it tells your gonadal axis to speed up. But DHEA is made from the same stuff as cortisol. So the way it can tell your adrenals to stop stressing so much and start making hormones, that's what I think makes it so powerful. It does kind of get towards that, the root cause analysis.
Mm.
And at the same time as it does that, it does vasodilation and put a horn on a jellyfish. So Tonkat Ali is fantastic. You take that at night. Shilajit was one of my favorite herbs for this as well, but there's a lot of crap Shilajit out there at the moment. The trick is, I tell you the trick with Shilajit. Most people think it works with this compound called fulvic acid, which it doesn't.
Right.
It's you got to look for the levels of urolithins. There's this
Urolithin.
compound,
Uh-huh.
urolithin A and urolithin B.
Right.
Urolithin's also found in oak barrels and everything as well. So there's a lot of foods out there, but so like the health benefits of whiskey, the anti-aging of high quality whiskeys and that sort of stuff. It's all this compound called urolithins. So
Mm.
that's the active ingredient in things like maca and pomegranate and shilajit and a lot of our berries and fruits and that sort of stuff, and also oak, which is where the oak barreled fermented things were good for urolithins. There's some of the my favorite herbs for boosting testosterone.
The
Remember
Shilajit.
the horny goatweed? There's
Yes.
that.
What do you think of horny goatweed?
Oh, it's excellent. Epimedium.
Okay.
The challenge is it also has phytoestrogen components,
Yeah.
but through its phytoestrogen components, it does do negative feedback to your brain to say, we've got enough estrogen, so you don't need to convert all this testosterone to estrogen. So
Mm.
that's where the phytoestrogens aren't always something to be scared of in men, because when you have a phytoestrogen effect, it's a mild effect on a receptor to tell your brain, we've got enough estrogen. And when your brain thinks you've got enough estrogen, then you get less conversion of your testosterone to estrogen. But it's got a compound in it called icarin. And icarin is a very good vasodilator. It's got a lot of stuff for sexual performance, builds up testosterone, makes the goats shag, so it should work for us.
That's exactly. Um, and in terms of minerals, zinc, selenium, I like tyrosine.
Yep.
The guys not eating, if they're vegetarian straight away, I think, are they getting protein sources of tyrosine and other key aminos? What sort of other things would you throw in there for?
Yeah. The B vitamins are so important for controlling the detoxification pathways and that sort of stuff. Talk about methylations and sulfations and all those sort of pathways that our body needs to regulate the ratios of our hormones. Zinc and selenium is the ones that I carry on about the most. And you can get them in supplement forms, but also you get really high levels of them out of pumpkin seeds. And
Yes.
it's even the pumpkin seeds have another extract that straight up inhibits 5-alpha reductase as well, which is the conversion to dihydrate testosterone. Brazil nuts, I think it's like 3 or 4 Brazil nuts gives you the same amount of zinc and selenium we get out of most supplements.
Yeah.
Um, Lycopene is another interesting
Yes.
compound that
Found
comes
in
out of
tomatoes.
tomatoes and tomato paste.
Mm.
So I think, and it's not destroyed through heating and cooking and processing. So tomato, I used to do this old remedy for the guys up north where it was just like a tablespoon of tomato paste and a teaspoon of turmeric. And we
Right.
just find a way to have that every day, like either in hot water or cold water, I don't really care. And just have that because turmeric is very good at controlling stress, controlling inflammation, antioxidant. It controls those conversion pathways. And when you do turmeric tomato paste together, the lycopene and tomato paste, it loads up in the prostate and protects your prostate and testicular tissues from oxidative stress and everything. Um, Yeah, they're all really important. Iron deficiency is important to make sure we don't have that. Same with iodine deficiency, which comes from not eating enough seafood and that,
Yeah.
because they can contribute to slower thyroid function, which causes all sorts of hormonal problems. But iron excess is also a problem.
Seeing a
So
bit of
a lot of,
ferritin excess at the moment.
yeah. Oh, I tell you what, when I was up in Mackay, I don't know, it's very common in a lot of the Mediterranean sort of people. It's also very common in a lot of the people with Celtic origins and that
Right.
sort of stuff. Yeah.
I
Um,
don't know that it's significant in terms of clinical significance, but I have had
just oxidative stress into the liver and
okay.
that sort of shit. Yeah. Yep.
Mm,
And even, with the endo girls, the pain, a lot of their pain comes from the oxidation of the iron. It's like rusting kind of in their
yeah, right.
tissues, creates a lot of pain. In men, it makes you angry, frustrated, and the old shit on the liver, we used to call it, makes you bilious and cranky, hot and
Mm.
bothered and frustrated. Yeah.
So interesting.
Um, yeah, it's cool, eh?
So interesting.
Boron, that's a really important one that not many people talk about. Boron's essential for testosterone production.
Now,
Yeah.
so is it 3 milligrams, like a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of boron, which isn't
Mm.
the same as borax?
No, no, don't go to eat a heap of borax. That's a cockroach poison. But it is got boron in it. And
Yeah,
to be honest, I think it's the only form of boron that's on the permissible ingredient list for TGA. So most of the boron supplements out there are using very low doses of borax. So it's
right.
like, but yeah, you're right. The doses of boron we need are very small, like
Mm,
1 milligram to 3 milligrams,
mm.
like, and for perspective, I think that's what 1/2000th of a teaspoon or something like that,
Yeah.
for like actual boron, So, um, but yeah, you can get it in supplement form. It's also found in all the nuts and seeds, the same nuts and seeds you get your zinc and selenium and that sort of stuff from. Yeah.
I have a saying, I haven't trademarked it, but it's a handful of nuts for your nuts. I really
I
reckon
was
out of,
just thinking about that. Yeah.
I think out of all the things you can do, a small handful of nuts for your nuts each day with, and not pistachios and cashews, but pumpkin seeds, walnuts,
Yep.
um, Brazil nuts, pecans.
Yep.
I'm making some bliss balls a little bit later, actually, and I'm putting some maca and nuts in there and Brazil nuts just to get the
Oh,
selenium
yeah.
up and superfoods.
Yeah. And the zinc and the selenium, it's, when you roast them and salt them or whatever, that, yeah, it's not the best for the oils in them, but it doesn't do anything to destroy the zinc and selenium. So
Yeah,
if
great.
if you have to have the roasted forms, and something magical happens when you heat up a pecan, it
Oh,
tastes bloody delicious.
so good.
Yeah,
I do that with
yeah.
a splash of tamari. Put it in a frying pan, just
Oh,
kind of
yum.
roast it, and then tamari, and it's just
Same
addictive.
with pumpkin seeds. I
Oh
love
yeah,
that. You can go and buy those with that tamari. Yeah, I love nuts. Like,
yeah.
shouldn't, lucky I didn't do that here. I love nuts. Like
Anyway,
little stress balls.
is there anything else that you think would be really critical for a guy listening to this, which, as I said, it might be guys and women, but particularly men
Mm,
who want to have healthy levels of testosterone, not fall down the slippery path of producing too much estrogen through aromatization or
yep.
DHT? What are your
Uh,
key things?
Number one, sleep.
Yeah.
Trying to get sleep and stress under control. And if you're not sleeping, it just doesn't really matter what we do. It's so hard for shift workers, the poor buggers. I cheat a lot with shift workers, use a lot of melatonin and DHEAs and try to
Right.
recreate that kind of
Body clock.
hormonal wave that at least allows their body to have precursor nutrients to drive things out.
But no sedatives, just on a note on that, no sedatives really, because
Mm,
sleepers bypass REM, and REM's when you make testosterone. So
yeah, that's a
it's
very good point. Try Tonkat Ali. Seriously, the combination of Tonkat Ali at night to drop that cortisol, I think, is one of the most effective things. And then you wake up with your morning wood again. And a
mm,
lot of guys stop doing that. Can you have some pretty weird dreams? And you can also take Tonkat Ali again before any big events. You can take pretty big doses of it. And I always look for most of the studies on Tonkat Ali were done by a particular type of Tonkat Ali, LJ100. So I'll often find any supplement that uses the LJ100 form of Tonkat Ali.
okay.
I think it's standardized to have about 2% of these uric or whatever. where Tonkat Ali, I think, is closer to, sorry, the LJ 100 is closer to 10 or 20% uric
Okay.
aminones. Doesn't
That's
matter,
good.
but just make sure we get good quality ones that have got some standardization to uric aminones, I think they're called.
Okay.
um,
So sleep?
yeah, sleep and stress reduction, exercise.
Yes.
So you got to recreate that hunting and gathering kind of scenario. Definitely look into posture more after today. I've inspired myself to focus more
Me
on
too.
posture. Yeah. Foods, lots of nuts.
Yep.
Keep a handful of nuts all the time. Um, and then basil is really effective. So basil's amazing studies on basil at the moment coming out for controlling moods, controlling depression, helping the brain, but also has a lot of effects on hormonal pathways. And you can eat so much more basil, than we can get in the supplements. And that's where I do often recommend foods for things like tomato paste. Tablespoon of tomato paste gives you more than most of our supplements for lycopene. So
Yeah.
yeah, the Brazil nuts, the pumpkin seeds, button mushrooms. Button mushrooms are very important for blocking the conversion of testosterone through to estrogen. So green tea, and those sort of
Oh,
antioxidants,
yes.
grapeseed, um, oak barrels. So I'm starting to, sounds like I'm recommending red wine and whiskey,
It
which could
does.
be sources of urolithins, but you can supplement with urolithin directly. Um, and my favorite herb at the moment, Tonkat Ali, seems to be a good one for it. There's another herb called saw palmetto.
Oh, yes.
Um,
What about
I
supplement?
really like saw palmetto because it does both 5-alpha reductase, and so it does block the conversion to dihydrotestosterone and estrogen. But it
It's good for
doesn't block the
prostate issues.
conversion totally, it just modulates those.
Yeah. Good
So
for B8. What is it? Benign prostatic
yeah,
hypertrophy
yeah,
and
definitely is.
prostate
Yeah. And that's
issues.
what's the other one? Pygium, African Pygium or something like that. That's the other one that they always use. Nettles, but it's usually the nettle root. Nettle root is really effective. Fenugreek is another one.
Oh, yeah. Fenugreek.
Fenugreek,
Oh,
I love fenugreek. One
yeah.
of the reasons why I love fenugreek is it drops the sex hormone binding globulin. So
Ah,
fenugreek drops
it's
and
in the liver.
increases the amount of free, it increases the amount of free testosterone you have.
Mm.
Um, and interestingly, it also helps to improve blood sugar control and blood sugar management as well. So
And it smells great when
when
you
you,
sweat.
yeah, does it?
It comes out through your pores.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
Because you
that
can
actually
use
might explain
fenugreek
a
for
few.
improving
Yeah.
breast lactation and milk when you're
No, that's
breastfeeding.
right.
So I
Yeah,
used to have
yeah.
it when I was feeding the kids, and you'd go, "Oh, I can smell fenugreek." But anyway,
Yeah, wow. That's another one of those memory triggers. But yeah.
we digress.
Awesome.
And
Yeah,
ginseng's. I just remembered when you were talking
of
about
course.
fenugreek, panax, and all the amazing Chinese herbs that
Yep.
root ginsengs, and even ashwagandha is really
Yeah, yeah.
its own.
And then when you have a look at the effects of ashwagandha, the withania, the Indian ginseng, it typically slows down the HPA axis, the stress axis,
Mm,
and increases everything else. So
yeah,
it increases
perfect.
the gonadal axis, increases testosterone.
Yeah,
Yeah. Some people they make them feel a bit flat and something, or it does some weird shit to serotonin receptors and that sort of stuff, where some people feel flat, but for other people, it works as a really nice adaptogen. Yeah,
yeah,
well, I think turmeric is really good. Hey, a lot of people, because
yeah.
turmeric is so cool, just to dampen down most of the triggers for your stress, because it's anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, helps with all your liver pathways. At the same time as it dampens down your stress response, so it
Mm,
allows make sure that you put a bit of a make sure you're capable of boosting your other hormones without directly stimulating testosterone. It does help you to make sure you're capable of doing that.
yeah,
Yeah. And zinc, zinc is so important. I
yeah.
keep talking about zinc. It's funny because it's even like 5 milligrams of zinc, I think, is lost in every ejaculation or something like that. And it's
Right.
often from teenage boys onwards, they actually recommend blokes do an extra 5 milligrams of zinc every day based on the fact that they're
They're
probably
losing
likely to
it.
lose 5 milligrams. Yeah.
Huh. There you go. It's
Yeah.
I think zinc would be my number one out of everything, to be honest, because it's in
Yeah.
food and it just stops that pathway being there's
Mm.
no point boosting testosterone if you're just going to leak it into estrogen. Um,
Yeah. And also zinc is essential for getting rid of a lot of the toxins that creates the testosterone deficiency. And
And copper.
often and I don't know which comes first, maybe it's because we get so much exposure to pollutants and all that crap that depletes our zinc levels. That means we get lower testosterone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and could be, it's very important for everything from bone, to prevent osteoporosis in men, sperm production. Apparently, I said before that testosterone levels have dropped by about 20 to 30% in the last 50 years.
Yes.
Sperm levels have dropped by about 50% in the
But
last 50
yes.
years. Yeah.
No wonder
So
fertility is an issue.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, because you're getting less fish and most of the fish are a bit mong.
And they don't wriggle. Um,
Mm,
and we won't branch too far into the fertility thing, but I know that the issues now lie equally with the girl and the guy.
yeah.
So, and the majority of the reasons guys, they're not producing. So for sperm to be considered fertile, you only need 10% of it to be
Mm,
wriggling and doing its thing and not having two heads and having some mitochondria in the boot of the bonnet of the car,
mm,
as such. But, getting guys to having 10%, a lot of guys are finding that they've only got 5% active sperm. And
mm.
zinc can spin that all around pretty quickly. So,
Yeah. And if we've got 50% total reduction in load, then
mm.
that percentage means a shitload less. Hopefully not a shitload, but that's
No,
not going to help
yes, a
fertility.
lot
But
less.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
A lot less fluid
Yeah.
actually being ejaculated. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, look, thank you. Where can people follow you and learn more about you and your offerings? And if they ever need a formula made, they'll be knocking on your door for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I got mattlegge.com. It's probably the easiest one. I think my email's matt@mattlegge.com. I think my socials is Matt Legge. So it's like pretty much everything should be hovering around that.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, just do it there. And then I can help with formulating and doing the personalized nutrition stuff as well, which I'll show you more about later when it
fantastic.
launches properly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
Excellent.
about
There's
it.
so much that guys can do that, and they don't need to resource to TRT and injectable stuff. You can just embrace the natural stuff that's right in front of you. And I've learned so much today. So thank you very
Oh, my
much.
pleasure. It's fun.
See
Do it again.
you.
See ya. Bye.